Mark Goring goes to Southern California, gets all tanned up and pretty, comes back and tells us what he needs to know. Coming up next.
Praise the Lord.
That's my intro. So Mark, you just spent a week in Southern California.
That's right.
I didn't say this before, but you got tanned up all kinds of pretty.
Yeah.
There's a country music song for you.
Which is a miracle, because what I went out there to do, we spent 8 hours a day inside of a very poorly lit classroom. So
you went to Southern California. So you stayed inside.
Yeah,
Southern California. Okay, so
because that's what you do when you go to Southern California. You sit in a classroom with fluorescent lighting.
That's not what I do. Did you get to go to the ocean at all?
I mean, did you
get? Okay,
yeah.
Well, at least you got to go to the beach. Okay, so 8 hours in a room with a whole bunch of guys, incessantly talking about church planting movements, I suppose.
Right. Yeah.
Brought some stuff back, I hope.
Talked about church planting movements. How do we mobilize towards the gaps? And learned a lot from a lot of different guys. And one of those guys, Jared, who's in South Asia, was talking about 3 ways to get started and build teams. And the way that he summarized this, I think, are things that we know, but just really clear and a simple way to talk about it. So 3 ways to get started and build teams. And those 3 ways are what we call 0 to 1, or getting started by mobilizing people into the harvest through networking and through training.
So like whenever we say 0 to 1, just in case you aren't familiar with some of the language that we use, Mark is saying it's a way to get out into the harvest. And so we say from nothing, there's no one, to I start sharing the gospel with somebody. Right. We refer to that as 0 to 1 because the first level of work in a new gap or a new area is seed sowing. You got to get out and get the gospel going. So what was it that really struck you about this tool? You've talked quite a bit about it. We've got a really fun graphic. We'll share it with you. But what was it about this tool that really connected, that you thought was helpful?
Yeah, so I think it's true that to get started and to build a team, it involves these 3 things, but you can really start from any one of these places, and then together it begins to build momentum for the work, right? So it's that momentum piece that comes not just by, and I think sometimes we can get in this like savior complex, savior missionary complex. I'm going to go out, I'm God's answer for this people, for this place. I'm going to go share the gospel, and this is going to happen. And that's just not true. So when we talk about 0 to 1 and beginning to engage in the harvest where there is no seed sowing, gospeling happening, it's going to take that. It's going to take going out there and putting in those reps, sharing the gospel, getting that area saturated. But that by itself is not going to accomplish the task. There's the task, no matter what your focus might be of a people group, a place, is far beyond anybody's ability to go out and sow and see that happen. So it is going to take that, but it's going to also involve connecting with others who are existing and doing the work, and then beginning to train up people to go. Yeah,
so you and I are in a U.S. urban context. One of the benefits of that is that there's not going to be any U.S. cities where there's no Christians. Right. There might be segments and pockets within the cities where there may be no believers, but we're going to run into believers. So how does the other 2 elements of the 3 ways to get started? First one is I'm the seed sower, I'm 0 to 1, I'm sharing the gospel. How do those other 2 ways begin to help move us towards the movement with believers?
So I think the best illustration, and I didn't share this with Dave before we record, but I think in Acts 19 we see this, right? Mm-hmm. Where Paul ends up in Ephesus, and then he's kicked out of the first place he goes, so he ends up in the hall of Tyrannus, and he brings along disciples, and then the statement there is over the course of 2 years, all of Asia hears the word of the Lord. And so here he is in this place, the hall of Tyrannus, through networking, through connecting with people. He's in the right place, and he's training up leaders that then begin to go to all of these places and share the gospel. So we can see throughout all of Paul's journeys, he's doing 0 to 1. He is sharing the gospel in the harvest. We can see in this case, he's definitely connecting with some of the people who know the story. They know the book. Even if they might not know Jesus, he's starting with the Jews, he's networking, he's connecting, and then he's beginning to do training to filter for and find those leaders. So he's doing all three of those things, and then the result is over the course of 2 years, all of Asia hears the word of the Lord.
So based upon y'all's discussion, what would you help us to understand when you mean networking? What does that look like?
So by networking, really, we're looking for those that are Great Commission Christians is kind of the term we're beginning to use more and more, I guess, in our lingo. But those that are envisioned with the primary task or focus being the Great Commission. We're not talking about a social justice work or some sort of transformation of world systems, but those that are Great Commission Christians. So we want to begin to connect, to network, to find who's already got that way of thinking somewhere in their cooker, and they're looking for, how do I begin to do this? And then connecting with them and filtering and training them.
So going back to the previous episode where we were talking about finding forceful Christians, you made mention that we're finding those people who already have the theological framework to understand the Father's heart and respond to the tools. A lot of this is it groups, or is it more like the smaller kind of one-on-ones when you're talking about networking? Or one-on-twos, one-on-threes, smaller groups?
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I feel like I'm learning that it's both. And a friend down in Dallas named Kyle, he's been pivoting towards finding individuals who would gather people in their home to do a training with. But I think we oftentimes will think of, especially in North America, there's so much of our context is churched that we're looking for where are those people that are in a brick and mortar building that we can train. But networking is really finding the person of peace within whatever network that might be, and whether that's a pastor of a church or whether that's somebody that's going to gather people in their house.
Yeah, I like it. What about training? What's the idea behind that whenever we use the word? So we use it 0 to 1, right, is one of the ways. Networking.
Yeah.
Third one is training. What does that look like?
So then here the idea is that we're framing this as getting started and building teams. And I think that's what our experience has been through training, also through networking and 0 to 1, but especially training is the way that teams form. That as we go into that setting where there might be a pre-existing social network, a church, and you're doing that training, you're looking for who are the doers that are going to emerge out of this training, and then how do you help them to become a team out of that with the initial target of who are they relationally connected to, how can they share with them, and then is God going to speak and go beyond that. But all of this saying, getting started, training is a valuable piece to equip and train the saints, which is a part of what God calls us to do and what we see. We were talking about Ephesians 4, that role of the church leader to train the people to do the stuff. But then also, this is going to be a powerful and effective way to filter for and find those that are ready.
How do you think these three interact? Can they like exist on their own, or do you think that they're kind of complementary to one another? How does that work out in your thinking?
I think this has been really helpful to hear this from Jared, because those are all so connected, and it almost is like when you want to see the water level rise in a city, it's going to take all three of those rising at the same time to really get things going. If you're just in the harvest 0 to 1, it's going to take a long time to get anywhere. If you're just networking, you don't have anything to bring people into. And if that's not leading into training, then you're certainly not getting anywhere. And if you're just focusing on training, it can be disingenuous if you're not actually doing the stuff, but also it's harder to find those people to train. So I think I see them all connected, and especially when you do the 0 to 1 and the networking, it leads into training a lot of the time.
So in my experience, training has not netted that many seed sowers. That's not to say that it's probably because I'm a bad trainer. It's probably most likely is that I'm a bad trainer. But what I do find is that a lot of times the paradigm or the framework of established Christianity in our city doesn't lend itself to people who feel as empowered as they could be to go out and just own the task and go and do it. But I do find that when we train that you'll get 1, 2, or 3 people out of a group of maybe 50 or 60. We've trained as many as 120 at a time and saw 0, that came out of it. I had somebody share with me, and I wish I could give them credit for it, but I can't remember where it came from, but it made total sense to me. where I got in a place where, for me personally, I kind of got, I don't really want to train, right? Just because it felt like I was spinning my wheels.
Right.
Whereas with networking and 0 to 1, whenever I did find someone I was networking with and I connected with them,
right.
I connected with them and I got
Yeah.
some traction out of it.
Yeah.
And so I got hesitant about doing a lot of training and started pouring into what we had. A, because of time, partly,
Right.
Because I had enough people to work with that I didn't need to find anymore. But the
Yeah.
statement was simply made is training, even though it may not net a whole lot of people, lets the community know that you're someone who's available to be trained, to be
Right.
trained by. Like it just kind of is a billboard for you that
That's
says, I'm a guy who can help you if you want help.
The people who are looking for the how question know where to find you now.
Right. Right, because you become, and then if there's people who aren't even part of that training, someone else is talking with them, and you actually get up networking opportunities out of that. Because even
Yeah.
if someone who's in the training is like, I'm not going to do this,
Right.
they may know of a friend who goes, hey, you know what you've been talking about? I know a guy who can help you with that, and they
Right.
become word of mouth for you.
Yeah. That's
Right.
good.
So I'm just saying that was super helpful for me when I heard that one, because I can get down on trainings real fast.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
You know, you can get down trainings real fast. But at the same time, that understands that perspective. So when we put all three of these together, what are we moving towards? The 3 ways to start. 0 to 1, where I'm out sharing the gospel, looking for seed sowers who are going to come out of the harvest. Networking among already existing believers who are open to and want to learn more about it. And then training broadly in front of groups that hopefully we can filter some out or get more networking connections. Okay, what are all those things shooting for?
So we're framing this up as 3 ways to get started, but ultimately this should lead to what Paul identified at the end of his first missionary journey, and that was that there was some local ownership. So all 3 of these things together hopefully leads to there are people within that segment, that city, that place that begin to feel like clear on the vision, on their identity to go after this, clear on the model from the word, and they know how to get started.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, one really important piece is that we just can't do this alone. There's no possible way, as you were saying earlier, why 0 1 alone isn't going to work is because there's just not enough time. I can't share the gospel enough. We have to have seed sowers.
Yeah.
And we've got to develop teams, and we've got to see the number of people begin to grow. And it makes total sense to grab them from the harvest and also from the church and those who are interested in having our feet in both worlds. I think the reason I really like this tool, whenever you were sharing it with me and as we talked about it, is because the pendulum can swing one way or the other. Like I can be the true missionary, as you mentioned earlier. I'm only going to be in the harvest.
Right.
Or you can be like, I'm just the trainer. But then, like you said earlier, if you're not in the harvest, what are you training them in? It's very disingenuous. You've got to have it in both fields. And honestly, it really helps in a co-vocational way, which we tend to lean towards a lot in our conversation. It's actually super helpful in a co-vocational kind of way because it's easy for us with a limited amount of time to understand that we can't do this and we need more people. And at the end of the day, it's really about grabbing seed sowers. And then as we get those things started, seeing those teams come together is, I mean, huge. It'll really move us to the next level.
And so
Next step.
Yeah, and so I'll end this podcast on kind of a personal thing. I think as you were just asking about being out there at SoCal and what I was getting out of that, I think one of the things that I took away was a renewed resolve that I can't be the answer, that no one person can be the answer. And I think some of what I hear out of this tool is it's a top down, it's a bottom up. It's gonna take both to really see a city, a people group, whatever you want to call it, reached. And so part of this tool is us coming to grips and grasp with the missionary can't be the answer, the person can't be the answer. On some level, God can use them, but they're going to have to die to self and join God where He's at work in all of these things to see that.
They're just going to have to contribute to a greater narrative, a greiter work that's going on.
That's right.
What we want to encourage you guys is oftentimes we find that people, when they're saying, how do I get started? They just kind of get paralyzed a little bit. And this is just a great way to go, okay, are there people that you know that you can share with in your friends and your family that are believers? Train them.
Yeah.
Are there people who don't yet know Christ? Share the gospel with them.
Right.
When you get an opportunity to go into to train a larger group because of one of those. Take advantage of that. It's not an either or. It's we're kind of throwing it all in the pot, stirring it together, and saying all of this is going to kind of get us to where we go.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Mark,
I think you got it.
I'm really glad that you came back, shared some of these tools.
I mauled you. I passed it to you.
You did.
No,
You did. But we'll share that graphic like we said earlier with you guys, and there's a few more things that are going to come out of this training, I'm sure, because you're processing a lot. So we'll keep throwing them out. Hopefully these will help you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.